Lifetime's Intimate Portrait, hosted by Meredith Vieira.
In the 80s, everyone loved the Go-Go's, and especially lead singer Belinda Carlisle. But beneath the band's bubblegum good girl image, Belinda was anything but squeaky clean. Problems with drugs, alcohol, money, and her weight were the start of a dangerous downward spiral. It's hard to get back on the charts after a nosedive like that, but Belinda Carlisle got her beat back and then some. Watch and see how she did it.
At the height of her solo career, Belinda Carlisle was at her thinnest and lowest. She was terrified of gaining weight after years of the press weighing in pound for pound.
Has she been eating any, it looks like she's been heading for the deli trays, backstage, that kind of thing. And it was horrible.
It's Belinda Carlisle. Look how pudgy she looks.
It's a different thing to just think you put on weight and then read about it in like 80 publications.
The pressure to be thin plunged Belinda into the depths of despair with an eating disorder.
I was told I had to stay thin, and so I did, at, whatever cost.
It would nearly cost her everything. But in the end, it would bring Belinda to a new beginning and put her on the path to self-acceptance.
Life is an adventure, and you're meant to take advantage of it, and that's always been how I felt from when I was really young.
Belinda Jo was born August 17, 1958, to Joanne and Harold Carlisle. She did most of her growing up in the Valley, just north of Hollywood. She was the oldest of 3 children.
She was the first child, and everything they do is cute. And Belinda was very cute.
But at age 5, Belinda's life would change drastically. Her father abandoned the family. There was no explanation. His absence was met with silence.
I definitely had daddy damage from that, not having him around and not really understanding what went on.
Belinda never showed a whole lot of signs of how it affected her because she was more outgoing and survivor type. So whether it affected her real heavily, I don't know, or whether I allowed her to express it, I don't know.
My thing was abandonment issues and being insecure about people leaving. I didn't really realize until I did go and deal with a lot of things that how significant him leaving was.
2 years after her father left, Belinda's mother would remarry. Duke Kerchesky was her new stepfather. Belinda's last name was changed to Kerchesky, and she was told to call Duke Dad. It was a difficult transition for the 8-year-old. To make matters worse, Duke was very strict.
You do what I say, or you get a little swat on the backside to put you on the straight and narrow.
My stepfather and I always had a tough time getting along.
Just butting heads. Her being hard-headed and me being harder.
I think that it had a lot to do with my father leaving, basically, and sort of just having a problem with someone just coming into my life and being able to tell me what to do and laying down laws that I didn't want to adhere to. We had a really hard time, very hard time.
As Belinda grew older, things got worse as the pressure to behave increased. Over the years, her mother gave birth to 4 more children. Now there were 7 kids altogether.
My mom kept having babies.
And as the oldest, Belinda was expected to set an example. She didn't. She was a tomboy now, with a purple Stingray bike and a taste for mischief.
Of course, she was always talking back and lying.
And getting kicked out of Girl Scout camp for putting bugs in everybody's sleeping bags. And making up her own makeup.
The Comet cleanser, I used to mix it with water and put it on my eyelids, and Crest toothpaste for my lipstick.
It's just whatever was expected was not done. Like being the first girl on a boys' basketball team. Never heard of.
I wanted to play basketball, and there were no girls' basketball teams, so I wanted to prove a point. So I tried out for the boys' team. I made the team. I was third-string guard. I was the first girl in California to be on a boys' team.
But Belinda was silently suffering. Always a little on the chubby side, Belinda was getting teased at school about her weight.
It was, Belinda at school. And of course that hurt. I was constantly getting in fights with that. But at the same time, I was a very funny kid, so it was like I was like the funny fat one. But I remember back then that, kids can be cruel and hurtful, and they certainly were with me. But I was extremely tough. A tough little girl.
But when Belinda became a teenager, her body changed. She dropped weight, and all of a sudden, the fat funny one was the new hottie in high school. Being thin meant people would like you. It would be a lesson she would never forget.
So I was like a cute little surfer girl, all of a sudden. From that point on, of course, I would look in the mirror and still have issues and not want to go back to where I was. To this day, it's an issue.
In high school, Belinda became very popular. She hung out with the in crowd. She described her life in this 1981 interview.
I was a real good student, and I was a cheerleader. Does anybody have a cigarette? I'd like for a cigarette. I was a cheerleader, honor student, mascot, majorette.
But years of being teased about her weight, the loss of her father, and her turbulent home life had left her feeling like an outsider. That would all change in her senior year.
I ended up in this art class with this girl who was always dressed in big glitter platform shoes and wore a Cub Scout t-shirt. And she was just really wild looking, and we changed everything for me.
She was Teresa Ryan, later Lorna Doom of the punk band The Germs. Lorna and Belinda became fast friends. Lorna introduced the cheerleader to a whole new world, Hollywood after dark. They would sneak out at night to listen to rock and roll bands on the Sunset Strip.
All of a sudden hang out with all these people in satin pants and Rod Stewart hairdos. It's all very glamorous.
Belinda was awestruck.
I started dressing differently at school, buying fashion magazines and smoking colored Shermans at school instead of Marlboros, and trying to be as different and as outrageous as possible.
She was wearing like strappy, stiletto-heeled platform sandals, a Kiana jumpsuit, and a big flower behind one ear. And that was right before she started wearing fishnets and 50s spike heels and trash bags.
And I remember washing my hair in baby oil so I could look, as disgusting as possible, and coming down in tie-dye jeans and my father, like, you're grounded.
Now it's sort of, you see a mohawk and spiked hair and you see blue hair. It's sort of like passé. It's been done and it's over it. But it was not done at that time. Neon hair was not done.
I'd look at them and see all that weird stuff, and I'd tell them that you get in the car, everybody sit down real low. I don't want anybody to see us driving.
I think I sort of developed a chip on my shoulder, actually, at that point. I was cool and no one else was.
But the turmoil at home had reached a boiling point. In a final heated argument with Duke, 17-year-old Belinda was kicked out of the house for good.
The last step for me being at home was having to pay rent for a place I didn't want to live.
She said she was going to leave home, so I packed her bags and threw them out on the porch.
And she turned around and told him, it's like the movie, She'd say, wait, I'm going to be a star.
Next, Belinda begins a journey that will change the course of music history.
Everybody we knew was in a band, and it's like, okay, well, let's form a band, okay.
And later, Belinda is confronted with her painful past.
My father, he obviously could have gotten in touch with me through the years, and I think I always sort of had a problem with that when he finally did make contact.